And welcome, everybody. Thank you for taking the time. I think you'll find this very educational today. Again, my name is Rob Kornarens. I grew up in Long Island, New York. I worked for a roofing contractor, actually on the roof through high school and college, and then was offered to open a branch in Atlanta, Georgia in 1979 for the same company. He moved me down to Fort Lauderdale in 1982. And then in 1983, I decided I was going to try it on my own. My twins were a few months old and borrowed 15 grand from my dad. We bought a pickup truck and we just grew up the company from there, doing what we say we were going to do. And now we're in 7 locations throughout the state. It's all about the people. It's not about me. And we have built a great organization of really talented people. I learned early on that I needed to diversify. You know, I came from a different state and all these air conditioners were sitting on a roof on wood sleepers. So every job we did, we have to raise them up and it was a pain getting a good subcontractor. So we started HVAC division within a few years. And then we also lightning protection. So anything that was on the roof, we tried to self-perform, and that's what we do today, including the solar. When we got into solar in 07, that was a big part. We're a visionary company. We saw solar coming and we said, wow, that's going to go up on the roof. And what a better way to get into a new business. We didn't know how big it was going to be. And today it's over 20% of our business. We build carports, rooftop. And one of the other things that I realized is, safety. I've seen many things happen on a roof, and unfortunately, some of them were very not pretty. And we didn't have the safety equipment, and it's so compatible for the roofing today. And that's what you're going to learn about. If we had some of the safety railings and the skylight protections and the things that OSHA require, but it shouldn't be a law to make you do the right thing. So safety equipment is a growing and a big division for us as well. And then I realized we can service the whole state. So today our headquarters is where we started in Fort Lauderdale. And then we have Sanford and Tampa as similar to us, all re-roofing operations. And then we have service and small scope work in Jupiter, Jacksonville, and Fort Myers, and Miami-Dade, which we're proud to say we just purchased a $2.5 million facility in Dade County. And we own every place we are established. We own property there except for Fort Myers, which we were looking for property. So we're here to stay. My twin boys are in the business. They're 37. We got my grandson coming up through the ranks. He's only 8, but he'll be in shortly. So I'd like to introduce Daniel Huntington, who's going to take us through all about the safety. And thanks again for joining.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dan Huntington, and as Robert said, I'm going to be talking to you guys about OSHA requirements in rooftop fall protection. A little bit about me. I like that Robbie's from Long Island, New York. I myself am from Buffalo, New York. We call it the frozen borough. I've been in fall protection for about 10 years, coming up on 10 years. And the majority of my time is spent up on roofs, identifying hazards and coming up with solutions, right? There's a lot of consultants out there that are able to say, hey, you've got a hazard. Well, yeah, no doubt. How do I fix it? Right. So that's what my focus has been, is saying, well, what does OSHA require? And then what can I do to address that hazard? And we're going to talk about that today. A little more about me. I've gone through pretty much every OSHA training regarding fall protection that I can find. I have Train the Trainer awards, IOSH certifications, and work at height risk management and work at height rescue. I've written articles published by OHS Magazine, EHS Today. I host an annual webinar like this one for EHS Today. I was a speaker, a virtual speaker at the 2020 Western Roofing Expo. And I've been actually tasked to work as a professional or an expert witness in a fall protection case most recently. So I've been in fall protection for a long time. This is my passion. And I'm excited to talk to you guys about it. To give you guys a brief overview of what we're going to cover, I just want to break it down. We're going to talk about OSHA requirements for your roof, but I want to simplify it for everybody, right? OSHA is a big book. It's really thick, and it's written by lawyers and people in the legal profession and in politics. So it's not written in a way that's just easy for average guys like me to understand. So I want to break it down and we're going to prioritize it. We're going to take a look at what are the most common rooftop fall hazards that your workers, the people servicing your building, are exposed to. We'll look at the applicable OSHA code to that hazard, the reasoning behind that code, and very briefly, as we work our way through, we're going to talk about how to solve those using key safety solutions. But this is not a sales pitch. I am not here to pitch product. If you're interested in learning more about the solutions, reach out to your advanced roofing rep, and they've been educated and trained on how to provide those solutions for you at your facility. So before we dive in, all right, I just want everybody to think about all the potential hazards that are on your roof. We're about to get to a poll, so get ready to answer that poll. When I look at a roof and somebody says, Dan, I can't do anything, I have a very limited budget, I need to protect one area on my roof, what should that be? And what I always say are access points. And I'm going to get into the reasons why. But first, we want to send a poll out to you guys. What are the primary means of access to each of your roofs? Are you getting up through a hatch? Are you checking, going through exterior fixed ladders, stairwell penthouses, or hot air balloon? That's very clever. So pick whichever one applies and let us know in the polls once we get the data back. Now, what I want to say, so most people, hatches and fixed ladders, some stairwells, which is exactly as I would see. It's typically split between fixed ladders and hatches. But what does OSHA have to say about those fixed ladders and those hatches? That's the real question. So in OSHA, so this is 1910.28. So this is the general industry code for fall protection. Subpart B34. You guys don't have to read the whole thing. We found what is important right here. It states each employee needs to be protected from falling into a ladderway floor hole or ladderway platform hole by a guardrail system and toe boards, except at the entrance to the hole where a self-closing gate or an offset must be used. All right, a lot of words there. Let's break it down. It says that each employee must be protected into a ladderway floor hole. What is that? That's a hatch, right? It's where the floor or the roof is acting as a floor that you're going down below. So if you have a hatch as your access point and you don't close the lid, because no one ever closes the lid because we don't want to get locked up on your roof, you don't close the lid, it has to be protected. And we'll talk about how. Or a ladderway platform hole is this other term that they use. A ladderway platform hole is a fixed ladder on the side of your building where the roof is acting as a platform that you're then stepping off of to exit the roof. And the fall hazard is through the rungs of your ladder at the top. That opening is where you could potentially fall through. So it's very clear in the code that we need to protect this. But the real question that you guys have is, well, Dan, you've been doing this 10 years and you're saying that this is the number one priority. I need to protect this one first. What about the leading edge, right? Well, we'll get to the leading edge, but first, let's understand how we even talk about risk, all right? Because there's different tools in the industry to assess risk. This is one of them, a risk assessment matrix. It's a very simple tool to use. You basically take the potential severity of an accident occurring, you rank it on a 1 to 5 scale, and then you multiply that number times the likelihood ranked from 1 to 5 of nearly impossible to almost certain. Then when you have that number, the multiplication, then it tells you if you're in the green, it's a neutral hazard, not a priority. Yellow is moderate or red is critical. I am focused on critical hazards in this presentation. So let's think about fall protection, right? Any hazard is going to be a 5 on potential severity, okay? In general industry, the minimum threshold for a fall when fall protection is required is 4 feet or higher. You guys are probably all thinking, no, you're wrong, Dan, it's 6 feet. It's 6 feet in construction, 4 feet in general industry. So let's say you have a fall that occurs at 4 feet high. You're a 6 foot tall person. Your head is 10 feet above the ground. You fall backwards and land on the back of your head. That is a potentially debilitating injury. So even at our lowest threshold, we're at a 5 in fall protection all the time. Where things get kind of wild is in likelihood. Now, people are always saying, well, never had an accident, so likelihood is 0, right? Never had anything happen wrong here before, so chances are that's not going to happen. Well, I'm not a superstitious person, but as soon as you say that, your likelihood goes up. But that's not actually a measurable metric, right? What is our most measurable metric in predicting the likelihood of an accident occurring? And it's actually really simple. It's the frequency of exposure to that hazard, right? The more frequency you have to a potential hazard, the more likely you are that an accident will occur, right? It's why more accidents occur on car crashes than plane crashes. We drive a whole lot more than we fly. So the question then becomes, well, what hazard on the roof am I exposed to most frequently? So I'm going to give you guys a quick example here. So in this example, and you guys can pick it apart if you want, but just go with me here. Our primary access point is going to be that hatch, all right? And on separate occasions, I have to service this unit twice per year, okay? I have to change out the belts in that exhaust fan. 4 times a year over at this exhaust unit near the roof, near the edge, I need to change out the filter. So that's 4 times per year, separate trips. Twice per year, I'm cleaning out those drains, right? One's in the spring, one's in the fall. And then 1 time per year, I've got to go up and I've got to recaulk those skylights, because skylights are always causing problems. So the question is, which hazard am I exposed to the most frequently, right? And I've done this example hundreds of times. And sometimes people say, well, the edge right here, 4 times, right? That's your most frequent hazard. Yep, get it. It's not the right answer. Some people, are aware enough where they read the title up here that says access points, and they say, oh, the access point must be the answer. And they say, yep, that's correct. But what's my exposure count? Well, how many times am I going up? 2 plus 1 is 3, plus 4 is 7, plus 2 more is 9. Oh, I'm going to be exposed to this 9 times. No, you're actually going to be exposed to it 18 times. Once when you come up and once when you go back down, which is why I always say, how are you getting on your roof? We need to protect your access points, whether it's a hatch or a fixed ladder or even a penthouse right next to the edge of the roof. We need to protect that as a matter of priority. It is exponentially higher on your exposure rate than any of these other potential hazards on your roof. Not only that, but access points act as a natural choke point on your roof, right? As you're leaving the roof, if you have 3 or 4 workers that are getting off your roof, what do? And I do it too. We walk to the hatch, we stand around the hatch, we wait for each guy to go through, we look down the hole to see if the guy's off the ladder, then we climb down, right? It's a natural gathering point as you're waiting for people to get on and off the roof. It's so critically important that we protect those. Now, there's one more thing that we have to clarify here, right? And this is for our OG OSHA aficionados. And the question is, can I use chains to protect a ladder opening, right? I see it all the time walking through facilities and on plants where people are saying, hey, I don't need to put a self-closing gate on that access point. I've got a chain up there. OSHA says that, chains are at least as effective as a gate. The answer is that that's not true anymore, right? Back in the 80s, OSHA wrote a letter of interpretation that said, hey, we believe that chains provide protection at least as effective as a swing gate. And so therefore you can use a chain instead of a swing gate. In this new code, 1910-28 came out in January of 2016, they use the term self-closing gate. You have to have a self-closing gate to protect your opening. Well, if I have a self-closing gate, can I still use a chain? And the answer is no. And their explanation, which we got right out of the Federal Register from OSHA, says that OSHA believes that double chains do not fully protect workers from falls at hole entrances and is therefore adopting the existing proposed requirements that platform holes have self-closing gates or be offset. So what that means is, think about how you're getting onto your roof. Think about any ladder in your facility. When you get to the top of that ladder, or if you get to the top of that hatch, what does it look like? Is there a gate at the top of it? Is there guardrail on either side? Is there railing around that hatch? If the answer is no, it needs to be addressed. It is a critical hazard that needs to be protected on your roof. So the question very simply becomes, how do we protect it? Very simple. We provide a solution called Key Hatch, which is available through Advanced Roofing. They know all the details they need to get to safely put that on your roof, attach it to your hatch without voiding your roof membrane warranty, without poking holes in your roof. If you have a fixed ladder, how do we do that? Again, very simple. We have a guardrail system that will protect either side of the opening with a self-closing gate in front of the opening, with a guardrail that won't poke a hole in your roof or void any warranties, also available through Advanced Roofing. So if at the end of this, you're interested in having a trained professional from Advanced come out, reach out to Advanced Roofing to get these measured up and addressed. So that's it, guys. So we've talked about access points. All right. We fully understand what OSHA says about it. We fully understand why it's a priority and how to protect it. So it's time to move on to the next hazard on the roof. So I know everybody's thinking edges, but it's not. Your next hazard on your roof is actually skylights. So here's your next poll is going to pop up. How many skylights are on your roof? So I'll give you guys 30 seconds to answer that question, those questions. None, 0 to 5, 5 to 12, 12 to 20, and 20 plus. Now, skylights, they offer a unique hazard on the roof because when you're around a skylight, you're typically not near the edge. And we talk about it as a false sense of security. When you're near the edge, you know that the edge is there, you know that it's dangerous, and you're very aware of it. Whereas when you're in the middle of the roof and you're near a skylight, you don't have that same kind of, I call it the spidey sense, right? Like I'm near something that's dangerous. Now, statistically speaking, you're more likely to fall through your roof, through a skylight, than you are off the roof. Looking at the poll results here, 60% have no skylights on the roof, which is great. I would rather that you don't have a skylight than we have to protect your skylights. They're that dangerous. 20% at 0 to 5, and then we kind of tail off in the 5 to 20 plus. So let's talk about, what does OSHA say about rooftop fall protection regarding skylights? In the code, OSHA says that each employee is protected from falling through any hole. And it says, including skylights. So I didn't write that in the code. That is in the code. OSHA considers skylights a hole. Now, before I even go on, I'm going to address the fact that a lot of you listening are probably thinking, yeah, but not my skylights. They're fall rated, right? Chances are they're not, especially in Florida. Skylights are not made out of glass. They're typically made out of like a polymer, a plastic. And that plastic gets broken down over time through what's called UV degradation. The sun is such a powerful force when it's beating down on roofs and rooftop equipment that will actually eat away at that polymer. I've seen skylights that have holes eaten in them just from the sun, not a chemical plant or anything like that. That plastic gets dry and brittle and very, very dangerous. So if you think that your skylight is fall protection rated, it may have been at the point of manufacture, but not beyond. So call the manufacturer of your skylights and ask them how long your skylight is fall rated for. Was it at the point of manufacturing, or did they guarantee it for 10 years or 15 years? So each employee must be protected from falling through any hole, including a skylight, that is 4 feet or more. That's where we see that 4 feet distance above a lower level by one or more of the following solutions. So in the last code with access points, OSHA was very straightforward. They said you need a guardrail and a gate. That's what you need. Here they give us options. They say, listen, you got to protect them, but you can use one of these 4 options below. Number 1 is a cover. A cover is very simple. You put something over the skylight so you don't fall into the skylight. We typically use a screen when doing a cover, so light still gets through, but a person falling can't get through the skylight. A guardrail, again, very simple. You put a guardrail around it. We'll show you what these look like, and then you can fall against the guardrail but not fall into the skylight. Travel restraint or personal fall arrest. So fall protection 101. A travel restraint system means that you're tied off to an anchor point or a lifeline. You can get to a hazard, but not fall through the hazard. So you can get to the edge, but not fall off the edge because the harness and lanyard that you're wearing is set up so that it's too short for you to actually fall. Personal fall arrest means you can get to the edge, fall off the edge, and fingers crossed you did your math right, your fall distance doesn't exceed your height on the building, and then you're safely arrested hanging on the side of the building. So what does this mean for skylights? I'm totally fine with a travel restraint system around skylights. That means I'm tied off with an anchor point. I can get to the skylight, but not fall through it. However, in my 10 years of experience trying to design these types of systems, it's very hard. Typically, you don't have one skylight to worry about. You have like a bank of them, and it's hard to not cross over a skylight while doing work and then just not fall right back inside the skylight you walk past. Personal fall arrest. That means you can fall through the skylight. I never recommend this as an option as a professional in fall protection, meaning you can fall through that skylight simply because you don't know what's below the light, right? On the side of a building, if I fall off, I know what's below me, so I'm not going to hit anything on my way down. Underneath that skylight, who knows? There could be racking, equipment, machinery, a second floor. There could be all kinds of things that person could hit on their way down. So when it comes to protecting skylights, their best options are a cover. We provide a screen as your cover. So we allow light to get in. Again, we provide non-penetrating to the curb. We don't put screws into your curb. We don't want to damage your waterproofing. That's why it's so critically important to work through somebody like Advanced Roofing to make sure that these are put on properly. Or a key dome railing system that goes around your dome skylights. Your railing, it goes around the skylight, so it's not a cover, right? It's protection around it. A lot of times people will upgrade to this as a solution when they're worried about shading. So if you have like a foyer or an open skylight over like an entrance into your building, you don't want that grid pattern shading on the floor as the light shines through the skylight. So you just put a guardrail around it to avoid that shadowing or shading on the floor. But either way, both are a great option. Both are OSHA compliant to protect workers from working on top of your building and not falling through your skylight, which again is statistically more likely to happen than the edge. All right, so thinking about your building. So we have 60% of you, doesn't matter. Don't need to worry about this. The remaining 40%, especially that 20 or so percent that had more than 12, think about the skylights on your roof. Think about the proximity and work that you have. Think about the walk paths that you have on your roof. Are you opening yourself up to potential liability of somebody falling through that skylight and being seriously injured? So just it's a moment of reflection to think about your site. Think about those skylights and are they actually protected? Then moving on, this is the number one, question that people ask me to protect is the leading edge on your roof. Okay. So people are always wondering about, on the roof, what should I protect? Who do I need to protect? What solutions can I use? And I'm always saying, slow down, slow down. How are we going to get to the edge first, right? How do we get onto your roof? What's the path that we get to the edge of the roof to service that equipment? And then let's talk about the edge. Now, there's a lot of text on this slide, so I'm going to break it down. So guys, don't tune out because you guys just saw a whole bunch of text. I'm going to break it down really simply for you. OSHA has broken this down for us into 3 zones. All right. 0 to 6 feet, 6 to 15, and 15 foot plus. Okay. So I want to show you guys this kind of visualization, and then we'll talk about the code. So we're going to start at this 0 to 6 is our most critical zone. 6 to 15 is moderate, 15 plus as our third critical area. So let's look at the code. 1910.28 B13 subpoint I. So this is when work is performed less than 6 feet from the edge, what I just delineated as a critical area on your roof. It states in the code that the employer must ensure that each employee is protected from falling. And then they give us 4 options in this zone: guardrails, safety nets, travel restraint, personal fall arrest. So it's very clear. If you have somebody working 0 to 6 feet, you got to protect them using something. And if you think about it, in that area, it's so dangerous, right? It's one trip away from a potentially fatal fall. So you're one misstep away from a lost life. And you think about the work that's being done, the tools that are being used, right? The trip hazards that are being placed around them. And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, this is a really critical area for us to protect. So how do we protect them? Guardrail, super simple, right? Put a guardrail on the edge, most popular solution by far. Safety net systems, not popular, outside of metropolitan areas doing new build, not popular on, low 2 to 3 story mid-rise buildings. Travel restraint and personal fall arrest. Again, they're fine solutions, but there's a heavy engineering and training component that comes with them. All right. If you're going to put anchor points and lifelines up on your roof, you need to be trained and engineered to have that solution up there. Anytime you have a new person, they need to be trained, need to have that PPE specific to that person off to the side and labeled and inspected. So those are solutions, but they don't come without long-term costs. Then we'll move on to this next zone here. And the next zone actually gives us a new solution that we can use. So now we're moving in on the roof 6 to 15 feet from the edge. So we've shifted in from the roof. The employer must ensure that each employee is protected from falling by using a guardrail system, safety net system, travel restraint, personal fall arrest. But then it says the employer may use a designated area when performing work that is both infrequent and temporary. So we just learned 2 new terms that we have to define. Designated area. Designated area is super simple. It's a flag system on your roof. So it's flags on your roof that's basically saying, don't go beyond this point, right? It has to be a physical barrier. It has to be visible from 25 feet, 39 inches tall, sag no less than 34 inches, tensile strength on the wire, et cetera, to be OSHA compliant. But you can only use it if your work is infrequent and temporary, which I'll define in a moment, right? Those are 2 critical terms. So kind of plant those in the back of your head. Now we're going to move on to the next zone when work is performed 15 feet or more from the roof edge. So now you're a solid 2 to 3 body lengths away from the edge of the roof. So you're feeling good about where you're at. And this is why OSHA ranks this as your third, most critical, third least critical, I would say, area on your roof. It says that each employer must protect your employee from falling using all of the solutions that we just talked about. But then where it gets interesting, it says the employer is not required to provide any fall protection. What? Provided that the work is infrequent and temporary, and you implement and enforce a work rule prohibiting employees from going within 15 feet of the roof edge. A lot of conjunction statements there, right? It says that, listen, you don't have to put fall protection up if you meet the following criteria. Your work is infrequent and it's temporary, and you implement and you enforce a work rule prohibiting employees from going within 15 feet. So you need 4 criteria to meet. The biggest question is, a rule is great, but how do you enforce the rule, right? And a great way to do that, and I talked to Advanced about this yesterday, is using a walkway more than 15 foot on your roof, and your training is stay on the walkway. It's more than 15 feet away from the edge. By design, it gets you to, 80% of the units up that we need to service. Anything that's off that path, we then put a guardrail up to protect it. That's a great holistic way to view fall protection on your roof, integrating the roof design with your training. But we still have some terms that we need to define here. We've already seen this graphic. Looking back up kind of our risk assessment matrix, right? Tying it back to what we talked about in the beginning, this term likelihood is what everybody gets, tied up on. So if we just simply switch that term likelihood with distance from roof edge, it's simple. The closer I am to the roof doing my work, the more critical it is as a hazard, and the higher it is on my priority list, right? So if you bring me in and you say, Dan, what do I need to look at here? I'm going to say your access points, your skylights, and any units within 6 feet of the edge. That's the bare minimum we need to get done right away. In those areas, you're one accident away from a severe injury, and you're leaving yourselves open to huge risks when it comes to lawsuits. Required definitions, temporary and infrequent. So if your task is temporary, it takes less than 2 hours, according to OSHA. Infrequent is typically considered quarterly. I think monthly is very frequent. So typically quarterly. So if you're going up on your roof more than 4 times per year, then it's pretty much frequent. As far as solutions are concerned, we have a railing system that will not penetrate into your roof to protect those edges, that meets the OSHA requirements for guardrail. Everything that we do is hot dip galvanized inside and out. Florida is an extremely corrosive environment, so we only use the best possible solutions when it comes to corrosive resistance to meet the quality that you're getting on the roof from Advanced. And then when it comes to designated areas, just a simple warning line is very easy to put up. Minimum of 6 feet away. I actually recommend you put them 10 feet away. At 6 feet, if a guy who's 6 feet tall falls against it and he takes 2 steps on his way back, it's not really going to do anything. So technically we're, meeting the code, but that's really a bare minimum, is that 6 foot distance from the edge. And then if you decide that you want to go with anchor points and lifelines, a good alternative to going to a full engineered, system mounting down into your structure, you can use this simple non-penetrating anchor point set up on your roof. I like to use these in areas where, hey, listen, all my units that I'm going to be servicing, I've got guardrail around them. But there's certain areas, maybe I've got cameras or lights on the edge that I only need to service on occasion. We have this on the roof and you can move it around to put it in the places that you need once a year. You just leave it up there and you can move it. You set it up behind the 15-foot mark, tie off to it, and then go beyond the 15-foot mark is a good way to kind of design it. So as far as, your primary, what you need to protect on your roof, these are the most critical areas. I'm going to spend about the next 5 minutes going through kind of the next step, which is, okay, once we've protected these critical areas, what do we do next? The answer is, well, what do you do when the roof itself is a hazard, right? And we talk about obstacles on a roof. Thinking about a roof, all right, and you guys can all relate to this. It is covered with trips and slips, right? In fall protection, we talk about falls. But that's only 1/3 of slips, trips, and falls. So if you think about walking through your plant, you're going to have a designated walk path on your plant. Any, lip 2 inches or greater, you're going to have it highlighted, yellow. You're going to have a little ramp there so that nobody trips. Then all of a sudden you get up on your roof and you've got conduit crossing your walk paths. You've got raised bed ammonia lines. You have HVAC equipment that you're going up and over or trying to duck under to get across your roof. Or you're walking on these sloped, roofs, and they're metal, they're slippery. So the question becomes, what do we do when the hazard or when the roof itself is a hazard? So for this, I pulled out just the general duty clause, which from OSHA is that we have to provide our employees with a place of employment which is free from recognized hazards. And trip hazards are a clearly recognized hazard. So I don't rank slips and trips in the same area I rank falls, right? That's why I said, protect your falls first, and then let's talk about slips and trips and obstacles. As far as solutions when it comes to this, right, it's all customizable. So as you know, your advanced roofing expert is walking across your roof, as he's stepping over things, he may be saying, listen, you know, you're getting a lot of damage on this HVAC ductwork coming across. You know, you're losing a lot of maybe efficiency on your heating and cooling systems. Instead of us coming in and replacing that, let's get you a bridge to get up and over that without causing damage. Or, you know, on your slope metal roofs, you know, we can see that you're starting to open up areas on these roofs because of the amount of foot traffic. You know, let's try and get, you know, a walkway that we can put across that roof to stop that damage from occurring. So don't be surprised when you have a professional come out and recognize these hazards or issues. And you're saying, well, wait a minute, we're not near a skylight, an access point, or an edge. Why are we talking about it? And it's because it's all about holistic safety, right? It's looking at your roof as a holistic area that needs to be protected. And I always encourage, especially safety professionals, as like a way to wrap up, your roof is a workplace, right? Think about your roof in the same way that you think about your building. And I'm always surprised at how many facilities that I walk through, and safety is everywhere, right? You can't walk into, you know, a certain area. You got to put on hearing protection, eye protection, beard net, hair net. You can't walk off of a certain delineated walkway because you could potentially, you know, be exposed to a hazard. Then we get up onto the roof and it's just like wide open, right? There's no visible safety anywhere. And it's, I believe, because it's out of sight, out of mind, right? The safety professionals, we walk through the plant and we see that and we recognize those hazards, but getting up on the roof, we do that less frequently. So it's not as visible as a hazard area. But statistically speaking, it is the #1 cause of injury in the American workforce. 880 people on average are dying from falls from height. And that number is actually increasing. So statistically, every other area of injury, we're getting worse, right? Struck by a hazard, electrocution, hearing damage, we're getting better in all of those, except for fall protection. We're having more fall accidents occur every year, and it's outpacing GDP growth. So it's outpacing new construction. And it's because as safety professionals, we're not up on the roof looking at potential hazards until after an accident occurs. And that's my last encouragement before we open it up to questions, is to say, guys, you know, think about your roofs as a workplace. Think about it as, you know, potentially a hazardous area with workers, and, you know, think about what you can do to have a professional come out and take a look and identify your free 15-point safety inspection. I think it's so critically important to come up with a plan and have a plan. So I'm going to end it there. We've got plenty of time for questions to come in, and I'll hand it over to Kevin, I believe.
Thank you, Dan. That was a lot of information, good information, keeping everyone safe. We have a few questions in the chat board here that we want to address. What about a door access that goes directly onto the roof with a large step down, approximately 1 foot?
So yeah, so door access is actually the best way to get it on and off your roof, like through a penthouse. If you have a 1 foot drop down, you really should have a step down there, you know, to kind of split the difference there. So it's not a sudden drop down. No guardrail is required for anything below 19 inches, I believe. So a break of 19 inches, you would have a handrail requirement. So there's no handrail requirement there. My biggest concern when it comes to those areas is what is the proximity from that doorway to the edge. So sometimes you have a penthouse, you walk straight out and you're like 6 feet away from the edge, like, whoa, or 6 feet away from the edge on the side. If that's the case, put guardrail around to protect the edge, but that step down is not a major concern.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Stephanie, I hope that answered your question. If not, or Susan, if you have additional questions based off that, let us know. The other question relates to warranties. How does the rooftop safety void your warranties, or is there a concern when installing these products onto the roof?
Yeah, so traditional method when it comes to installing fall protection involves cutting open your roof, going down into the steel, mounting into that steel, then backfilling your insulation and resealing that hole. Doing that obviously causes major issues with your roof. And I mean, I'm not the roofing expert, Kevin, I'll pass it over to you. But, you think about a 300-foot run and you need to put up, 8 foot on center uprights, you're going to end up with 37, 38 holes that you just poked in your roof just to put up 300 foot of railing. It's not good. So when we work with our systems, we do everything non-penetrating using counterbalance technology. So you have a set weight, a set distance away from the edge. You're required 200-pound load on that top rail before you lift it. So people much, much smarter than I am figured that out. So Kevin, I'll pass that over to you to talk a little bit more about warranties and poking holes in roof, but that's our main concern that we avoid with this specific technology.
I can take that, Kevin, and thanks, Dan. There's ways in both scenarios to flash these systems off appropriately, to work with your manufacturers to come up with details that'll be accepted to be integrated into the system. But to what Daniel's talking about, the best way to prevent leaks, to not incur additional maintenance points, is really to avoid penetrations. And that's where we like the ballasted solution, the weighted solution, where you really minimize those maintenance points that are coming into place. You minimize the interaction with the roof system. And as long as we're providing proper separation between the roof system and the anchor ballast points, there's really no concern for warranty at that point. Rolling back to a traditional system where you have those, attachments every 8 or 10 feet and you got 300 feet. So you're looking at 30 attachments. They can be done, and they can certainly be done inside the warranty framework. Now you need to clear that up front with the manufacturer, get those details approved, but we have ways to do that in both scenarios, but we do like avoiding it. Guillermo asked a question about these railings and how they work and perform in hurricanes. The great thing about a round pipe is there's virtually no surface for the wind to bite onto, so there's very low load. And when you design these to the OSHA regulations of 200 pounds of force, they're designed and permitted all the time inside the hurricane areas. We generally don't have concerns about them blowing over. So they perform very well in the wind. Round pipe has very little surface area for wind to actually bite onto, and they are substantially ballasted, which is a method that we also use successfully for putting solar installations on top of roofs that meet local hurricane code as well. So we have a lot of experience with ballasted installations.